According to Edward Snowden, it is mission accomplished, and he won. Having successfully leaked so much information about the NSA's surveillance practices, Snowden told the Washington Post he's pleased journalists are still writing about it and that now is our chance to reform. Snowden said, quote, "For me, in terms of personal satisfaction, the mission's already accomplished. I already won. As soon as the journalists were able to work, everything that I'd been trying to do was validated. Because remember, I didn't want to change society. I wanted to give society a chance to determine if it should change itself." Snowden, yes, he's right that he's won, right, in terms of exposing the existing programs, but do you think that this is going to really change the way that secret operations are kept secret in the future? That's the question that I want to know.
I think it's hard to say, and in particular, when he makes the point, I wanted to give people this information so that democratic people in the United States could decide, how they wanted to change society if they did. It's not at all obvious to me that people outside of a very small group of pretty hardcore, ideologically oriented people are paying attention to this, and I do think that we're going to see some changes in the way the NSA operates. But I don't ultimately think there's going to be a huge change in this sort of steady push, which you've seen going back throughout the 20th century, towards more and more government surveillance over the activities of private citizens and the benign, harmless activities of private citizens. That seems like something that governments have been moving towards for decades. This Snowden effort may be sort of like a small battle in that war. Which is significant. It's because usually these things don't happen, and the push that seemed inexorable at least has this little bump in the road. But I would be really surprised if the entire national security apparatus of the United States sort of started slowly reversing itself.
Yes, I would be surprised by that as well. But I mean, the question is not just the inexorable march of more surveillance, right? It's the inexorable march of more secrecy about the greater surveillance, which I think is the missing piece of the jigsaw puzzle that Snowden is kind of missing. Yes, now we're having a conversation about surveillance, but there is still an intrinsic belief among a lot of lawmakers and among a lot of Americans that fundamentally the government has to be able to keep secret all of this stuff because they're the ones who are keeping us safe. And unless you kind of undermine that and say, no, this stuff should be as open as is possible, as open as is consistent with achieving its aims, then you haven't really changed anything.
Well, and you need to have one way of, at least some sort of way, even if you are keeping things secret, of providing actual oversight by the legislative branch. I mean, when you see someone like James Clapper come out and lie about what the NSA is doing to Congress, that's a pretty serious problem. It means you're not even having oversight within a system of secrecy. So, I think stuff like that really egregious violations of the trust between different branches of government. I think something like that may end up being resolved by this. But I even on basic public disclosure and oversight of stuff, I would be really surprised if the Obama administration didn't come up with some very, very minimalist reform, then say everything was fine and that Edward Snowden is still a criminal and needs to come home and face justice. That seems like what they do. They've done it every step of the process so far. And even people like Mark Udall, from the senator from Colorado, who is saying, it's really, really clear the NSA needs reforms now, is still saying Edward Snowden is a bad guy who needs to come home and face justice, even though Mark Udall never would have known anything about what the NSA was up to without Edward Snowden.